Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today on the Suit Up podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Adkins. And naturally, before we get started, I always like to get the business part out the way first. So we would very much appreciate for you to like and subscribe to the channel. It's free of charge to do so. It's a great way to keep the channel going, and we love the interaction from our audience with likes, comments, let us know how we're doing, and suggestions for future shows. And today I'm really excited because I have someone very, very special to me in my life and in my family's life. Not only a friend, a mentor, but a pastor in my life. I have Mr. Buddy Thompson with me today.
All right. Glad to be here with you, Stephen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, my name is Buddy Thompson. I pastor Life Church in Mechanicsville. I've been the pastor there for, it's hard to say this out loud, 27 years. I've been married for 32 years. I have 2 daughters, 2 son-in-laws, 2 grandkids, and I feel like I'm living my best life right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, you definitely have a lot of experience in a lot of different areas. I know that, being a pastor, I can't believe it's been 27 years.
Yeah, I can't either.
Wow, that is amazing.
I feel sorry for those poor people when I started in my late 20s.
That's great, and that's a good point. We're going to deep dive into that because I really would like to talk a lot about your pastoral journey. What's interesting is that I always like to talk about how I've met my guests.
Yeah.
And so I think we were in our conversation on the phone, we were talking, and it was around maybe 2005, 2006, when the church really wasn't even in a building.
No.
It was, where was it?
Yeah, we were meeting in schools.
Yeah.
We had a long period of time that we met in schools. Our joke was, we were like the children of Israel wandering in the wilderness. We met in schools for over 9 years, 4 different schools. Before that, we were in a 7-Eleven building.
Wow.
It had been a 7-Eleven, and we rented it, and we were there for a little while. Our motto back then was, "Oh, thank heaven for 7-Eleven."
Literally.
But yeah, we were not. We didn't get our own building until 2006, actually.
Wow. Do you feel like that during that time, obviously being in the building as long as we have now, there was much more of an appreciation? Do you think that back then when you really had to put things, because you had to set it up and break it down all the time, what was that like?
It was, believe it or not, in some ways, it was some of the best years of our church and our relationship building with people because, we had a setup team and we had a breakdown team and people just kind of rallied around the cause.
Yeah.
We had an old panel truck that we put all of our equipment in and we would go every morning, set up the stuff, break it down, and pack it all back up. You would see, children's ministry teachers coming to church pulling, suitcases with all their stuff in it. And we were very much transitional.
Yeah.
And of course now, it's not uncommon to see churches starting out in schools or in theaters.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a lot of churches doing that back then. But it was a great part of our journey, and it definitely made us appreciate our more permanent facility.
Of course. Do you feel like that it solidified a lot of relationships?
Oh, absolutely. It did. There was a lot of good relationships. There's some people that are still, and not only part of my life, but part of the church that were there all the way back then. So.
Yeah. And you started pastoring kind of at a younger age.
Yeah, I was. I was 29, I believe, 29 years old. When you're 29, you think you know everything.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But then later you find out that you don't. But yeah, I was young. I was 29. My wife was 25. She's 3.5 years younger than me.
Yeah.
When we started, we had 1 daughter, and Robin was 8 months pregnant. So, it was quite a journey.
Yeah.
And back then, we didn't have very many people, so we wore a lot of hats. I see the hats.
Yeah, right, exactly.
We wore a lot of those and did a lot of things, and so it's been a great journey so far.
So in reality, do you think that you had to learn a lot trial by fire? The term?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
A lot of it was trial by fire. A lot of it was, you make mistakes and you learn from them. Like everything, business, life, marriage.
Yeah.
We did a lot of things, and we made a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes. Some of it was youth. Some of it was just inexperience.
Sure.
And so it was a big learning curve.
It wasn't like someone had a exact blueprint on
No.
here's how you pastor a
No.
church,
No,
right?
and here's how you pastor a church that has no building.
Right. No building.
Here's how you meet with people that, I mean, there wasn't even a lot of coffee shops back then.
Well, I was going to say.
So there's, it was fun trying to figure all that out.
Do you feel like, and I believe so, but I would love to get your perspective, pastoring a church is very much like entrepreneurship
Very much so.
because you have to wear multiple hats.
You do. You have to wear multiple hats. You have to be comfortable doing a lot of things. You can't be lazy.
Man.
If you try to start a business and you don't work hard, it's not going to last. It's not going to survive. You have to operate with integrity. So yeah, there's a lot more business building in church work than people realize.
And I think, sometimes I've heard in the past, and you probably have as well, that, when you pastor a church or you're the head honcho, you got the easy life, right? Or it's just not much to it. You just show up and do your thing and everybody else handles everything. But that's not always the case. You're really, from chief bottle washer, to be a little funny, but all the way through HR, marketing, you're the CEO, the CFO, all these different hats that you have to wear. Do you feel like that it's sometimes it's kind of misunderstood?
I think it is, and I don't want it to sound self-serving, but a lot of times it's kind of like a lawyer. People see lawyers, and they see them in the courtroom. They see them standing up before a jury,
right?
Making their closing argument, and they think, well, that's what being a lawyer is. That's not what being a lawyer is. It's all the other stuff that leads up to that moment. Yeah. And so, for a pastor, you might see him for an hour on a Sunday standing on a stage talking, but there's so much else that goes into that, up to that. And there's other things that they do, during the week with people, running the business side of the church. And there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to do it all, I think, or you really can't be effective. And then you really enjoy when people come along to help you bear that load.
And you're able to, grow the team per se.
Absolutely.
Grow the team. And I know that, you've gone 27 years, so you've had a tremendous amount of wins and losses.
Oh, yeah, so many. Yeah. And you have to learn from all of them. If you don't, you're going to still continue to have probably more losses than wins.
Yeah, for sure. Do you feel like you've had more wins than losses?
I do.
Excellent.
I do. I feel like I do, and that's what kind of helps keep you going too. That and feeling called to your purpose, feeling like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
All of that plays into that.
You've actually probably seen a tremendous culture change in the church over a 27-year period.
Oh my goodness, huge change.
So that's one. Talk a little bit about how you've been able to adapt to the culture change, because I know age demographics, ethnic demographics, everything probably has gone through an even flow over a 27-year period. Who we are today,
right?
It wasn't 10 years ago. It was totally
not at
different.
all.
Yeah.
I think what you have to do, particularly in what I do, you have to remember that it's about people, and it's about the message. Methods change.
Sure.
Culture changes. For example, this will give you some culture shock. When I started pastoring, there were no cell phones. I didn't have a cell phone, didn't have a computer. And I look back now, and today I can't function.
Right.
I'm sure I could, but I can't right now. So much has changed. People have changed. Yeah. Values have changed. People's morals have changed. But if you remember that it's about people, you learn to adapt. You learn to bend and not break. I tell people all the time, blessed are the flexible, for they will not break. But you have to adapt.
Yeah.
And you don't change the message, but sometimes we get married to methods, and you have to be willing to adapt and try to effectively reach people kind of where they are.
Yeah, and I've seen what's really interesting too, and I looked back, you've been my pastor now for 15 years. So
it's a long time.
It is a long time. And I look back, I'm 47 now. So when I started going, I was the ripe young age of 32, which really wasn't too far off of when you started pastoring at your age, at 29. So I remember, looking back, I'm like, wow, you still were green behind the ears, and, you think you know everything. I was still newly married. I think we had been married maybe 4 or 5 years, and I had had my first daughter, and I believe my second daughter was on the way. And looking at it and I'm like, wow, how much have I grown and learned, over that 15-year period, seeing culture changes, seeing that it's more about people and it's not really trying to, persuade them a certain way or another based on my, let's say my personal walk, but really in the message of loving them where they're at and allowing God to do the work.
That's right. And I think that's what's critically important.
Yeah.
You have to present the gospel because I am a pastor. That's my primary purpose.
Exactly.
Present the gospel, but then you love people where they are.
Yeah.
And you help them in their journey because we all need help.
Oh, 100%. And I think sometimes there's a stigma where as a Christian, you've got to have it all together or everything's going to be, rainbows and unicorns. But in essence, it's almost like once you become a Christian, you have this self-discovery of, wow, I've got a lot of areas in my life that I need help with or that I need encouragement in or that I need direction in. So we're really at a point where we're helping each other.
And I think you're touching on something important. One thing that I think has turned a lot of people off to Christianity has been a lack of authenticity. And you have to be honest about where you are and what you're dealing with and be real. And that's what people want. They want to know, hey, Christians are just normal people. They've got successes, wins, failures, problems, just like everybody else does.
Yeah.
But they've tapped into a power that helps them navigate that.
Yes. And they have a support system.
Absolutely.
Can't do it on your own.
You can't.
You need the Lord and you need one another to do it.
Right.
And I really, over the years in growing in my Christianity walk, learning that, really not being judgmental. Yeah. We're all going through something.
Right.
And one of the things that I'm most appreciative, in our church and in our walk is that we really don't try to, harp on people where they're living at right now. We just want to give them an avenue of showing that there is a better way, but allowing them to take their own steps in their own walk in their own timing, not my timing. Let them work it out between them and God.
That's right. You mentioned steps, and I think that's what's important. Whatever your next step is.
Yeah.
Yours is different than mine, somebody else, just whatever that next step is, work toward that.
Yeah.
And then when you get in that place, you figure that out, and then you take whatever your next step is.
And in those steps, appreciate the victories.
Yeah.
Appreciate the small victories along the way. If there is that next step, I do take it. Let's celebrate that victory.
Right.
I don't need to worry about 5 more down the road.
Right.
And somebody may say, you need to hurry up and get to 5 more down the road, but that's really not it. Let's see where we're at, take the small steps, enjoy those victories, and then use the guidance of our leadership to help us to know where that next step may be.
And sometimes steps are 2 steps forward and 1 step
Oh,
back.
man, don't talk about that.
You have to,
right?
You have to kind of sometimes step back and regroup.
You mean I face planted?
Yeah.
I face planted? I got to start over?
That's right.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know that pastoring has been, a majority of your adult life, but you're also, you have other things that you do.
Yeah.
So you're in the real estate business.
Yes, sir.
So let's talk a little bit about the real estate business. What is your why for getting involved in the real estate business?
Well, to be honest, it kind of started when we were meeting in schools.
Okay.
9 years of literally every week looking for a building. Just
location, right?
Yeah, we were looking. I would look at property. I would look at church buildings, commercial buildings.
Yeah.
And I kind of recognized that I had an appetite for that. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process. And then later, fast forward many years later, we finally get in our building. And I've been selling real estate now for 7 years, 8 years.
It's been that
7
long?
or 8 years, yeah.
Wow.
It was kind of a twofold thing, really. Number one, I wanted to create an extra stream of income for me and my family without being a burden on the church.
Sure.
But then number two, I really feel passionate about helping people become homeowners. I joke with folks all the time. I tell people everybody pays a mortgage.
Yeah.
You either pay yours or your landlord's.
Right.
But we're all going to pay a mortgage, right? And so, and I know markets go up and markets go down, but to have an asset that you can live in when you're ready to retire, that you don't have to pay rent on, it's yours. I just think that's important, and I try to encourage people to do that.
So you make 2 points that I picked up on that. First of all, that you wanted an extra stream of income. Entrepreneur 101.
Right.
Right? Can't have all your eggs in one basket.
No, you can't.
So it's one of those things that, I feel like you can never have enough streams of income. You want things that are recession proof. You want things that are not based on what's happening in the economy. So that's kudos to you because you're actually diversifying. And then number 2, you were looking at, you wanted to help people.
Yes.
So how natural is that, being a pastor of a church, that you're still through another avenue wanting to help and to serve people? So what is some of the similarities that you have found, or have you been able to pull some of the similarities from pastoring a church into your real estate business?
Yeah, I think one thing is, recognizing people's needs. One part, particularly people that I pastor and young couples that I've been able to help a lot of young couples get their first home, which brings me great joy.
Of course. Because you remember what that was like when you first started.
I sure do. And I remember, and I recognize also what a step up they're going to have for later on when they get, my age and their home's already paid for.
Right.
So number one, that's brought me great joy. But also on the pastoral side, and sometimes I have to take the realtor hat off and just help them, try to help them make a good decision.
Yeah.
Because not everybody has somebody speaking into their life about financial issues, or, just because the lender tells you can afford something doesn't necessarily mean you want to pay that much.
Right.
So I try to help them, make good, sound decisions financially as well.
So you're giving a little bit of spiritual advice, even in the midst of, real estate.
Yeah, and I even try to let them know, okay, I just took my realtor hat off. I just put my pastor hat on.
I love it.
So, and I like doing that. One thing too, I try not to push, in my particular case, I try not to push the realtor side of me because I don't want it to distract from my primary purpose, which is pastoring. But I do want to say too, and I could say this to your audience as well, sometimes I think we limit ourselves, and we think, well, I'm working my 9 to 5 and this is what I'm going to do. But I think sometimes we don't tap in to how much potential we really have. For example, other streams of income, or a side gig, or starting your own business, or whatever. We've got a lot of potential.
Totally.
And there's nothing wrong with tapping into that.
Yeah.
And stretching yourself to do more.
I love it. I love it. And that's really, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast is to show that, we're suiting up in our lives. And that doesn't mean just in fashion. That means in emotionally, spiritually, entrepreneur-wise, everything. We want to be always reaching and striving for more. And that doesn't mean that I'm not, as the Bible say, be content where you are, but also I'm also looking ahead to know that I have much more potential.
That's right.
And being able to tap into that. And there is some risk involved with that.
Right.
There had to have been some kind of risk for you taking on the real estate business.
Well, there was. I mean, there's financial commitments that you make. You spend money whether you're selling homes or not. If you're in the real estate business.
Your time.
Also, for me too, this was important to me. I never wanted people to perceive a conflict of interest, or that I'm just, doing whatever and compromising my primary purpose. But I recognize too that, I'm capable of doing more and also capable of helping people reach their goals as well. So it's been good for me. Plus, and this might sound self-serving, but one day when the time comes, I want to retire with some dignity and have another stream of income when maybe I'm a little too old to be pastoring, but I've got, I know realtors in their 70s and even 80s that are still producing. And
well, they enjoy it.
Exactly.
They enjoy the interaction with people, the relationships that you get to build from it. The income is great and all. But yeah, obviously when we get later in life, we don't want to be a burden to our children, a burden to others. So it's,
or in my case, a burden to my church.
True.
So, and I don't want to just rely on them to make it easy for me later in life.
Right, because you could have a whole nother 25 years of pastoring.
Yeah, and
you don't know.
When you get, sometimes you might get to a place where you recognize, I'm not at the top of my game anymore.
Right.
And it's time to hand the reins over to a younger man or woman. To take over. So.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. So I think that, obviously because of you pastoring a church, you're running a real estate business, you have a great support system at home. and I want to talk a little bit about, your marriage.
Yes.
So remind me again, how long have you been married?
It'll be 32 years in just a few weeks.
Wow. So obviously, coming from an entrepreneur household of myself, my wife is heavily involved in, all the things that we do. And I would not have had the accomplishments and the achievements that I've had without her support and being there right with me. So talk to me a little bit about the strength of your wife and how much she has helped and influenced. And then we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the building blocks, for that strong marriage.
Well, emphatically, being in my marriage I could not have pastored or grown the church without my wife by my side.
Wow.
And it's always been the greatest accomplishment that I've ever measured in my life has been my marriage, and then, of course, my children.
Yeah.
So, Robin is amazing. I feel like I've lived a charmed life.
Yeah.
My wife has been an amazing wife, amazing mother, now an amazing grandmother, and an amazing pastor's wife. So we've done the entire journey together.
Yeah.
We were young when we got married. I worked construction for almost my entire 20s. Our first 5 years of marriage, I was working construction. She was raising our children, volunteering in the church. And then when I became a pastor, I continued to work my secular job for a while.
Yeah.
Till the church was in a position to kind of take a step of faith and allow me to work full time for the church. But really, even then, the only way I could do it was with my wife working right alongside me. And it's been amazing. It's been a great marriage.
You've been learning together.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And do you feel like, in your opinion, what are some strong keys to a strong marriage like that?
Well, I think honest communication. I think being honest with yourself. Mm-hmm. I look back now and I realize, I didn't realize how immature I was when I first got married, or even how selfish I was.
Kudos to that.
Yeah, and you don't realize it until later on.
You're like, how in the world?
One thing I think too is important is you want to continually invest in your marriage.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is, the obvious stuff like date nights or little trips away, but reading books that support your marriage. We've read a ton of books related to our marriage. Going to marriage conferences or retreats or counseling. People have been like, I'm not going to do. If your marriage needs some help, there's no better investment than in marriage counseling or even personal counseling. Whatever you need to do
100%.
To keep that relationship strong.
You don't have to be in crisis mode.
No.
To be able to take the advantage of that type of counseling and coaching. I feel like that you're being that much more emotionally intelligent by doing that, because you're investing in one another and you want to be able to make it, we're doing great, but how can we get even better?
Absolutely. And if you're connected to a church, you can contact the pastoral staff there, and they can either give you some counseling or even refer you to some professional counselors that can help.
Absolutely. And we've always had for our church person, we've had a great resource for that. And I know that you all have always been a beacon of light as far as the strong marriage, and have always been an excellent example. And she's just as sweet as she can be, right?
Oh, yeah.
She's what we always used to kid me around. You're like, you married up, that kind of.
That's
we
right.
all married up.
I did for sure.
Yeah. And we look back at our beginnings of our marriage. I've been together with Lisa now 21 years, which is it's still hard to believe it's been that long. But at times I feel like we're just getting started. But we look back and we're right. There's levels of the immaturity and the things that you look back. And I think that all of us almost have to go through that as a rite of passage.
You do. And I think you grow not only from the wins, but from the losses.
I think more from the losses.
Absolutely. You learn more. You grow together, and you're there side by side. And thank God that you have somebody with you when you go through those dark places.
True that. Yeah, I kid with Lisa all the time because I'm a big risk taker. I'm an all or nothing kind of guy. And I'm like, if I fail the first time and if I go the second time, I'm going to fail even bigger the second time because I'm not going to fail like I did the first time.
Yeah.
But we learn from.
And I think celebrating, appreciating one another,
Yeah.
not taking each other for granted, those are all just significant things little things you do every day that pay a great dividend. And if you're blessed and fortunate enough to be in a good marriage, be thankful for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because not everybody has that gift.
And even if it's not a great marriage, it can be worked towards getting better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're not alone. We all go through
absolutely
ups and downs. It hasn't been 21 years or 32 years of
wedded bliss.
I was going to say complete bliss, like 100%. Like it's been all the up and up, right?
It has not been a 32-year honeymoon. That's for
sure. No. But I wouldn't trade the journey,
no.
for anything. Because it really, one of the things that I really appreciate now, and I kind of felt like after we got past 10 years and now we're into, plus 20, you really get to a place where you've got enough experiential knowledge, you've got enough tenure that you can really start to impart wisdom onto others that are, either just getting started or been married 2 or 3, 5 years or thinking about getting married.
Yes.
You realize, wow, I actually do have some knowledge and experience of advice that I can.
You do, and you look back on all the different seasons that you've gone through.
True.
With small children, and then they become teenagers, and they go to high school, they go to college, or they go into the workforce. Sometimes they'll get married and have children, and every season is a season in your life as well.
Yeah.
As a married couple, and you just work through those seasons. I love the season I'm in right now.
It's funny because I've seen a change in you since you've had grandchildren.
Yeah.
Not that there was anything wrong, but just more of there's you're in a totally different season, and you've kind of got this new spark again.
Yeah, and you know what? I used to think all these grandparents, they kind of annoy you sometimes, right? You're like, I cannot be that
right.
great.
I'm not going to be that guy.
No,
right?
I can't. And then you become one, and you're like, oh yeah, it really is that great.
Yeah. Well, and it's also really important for me, being involved with the church or finding one to be a part. This is to my audience. Raising a family, being married, and being connected with a body, that you're able to see some of those that have gone before you, and some of those that are at the beginning of their journey. One of the great things that connected us was that you were a father of 2 girls, very similar in age as mine. Mine are 22 months apart. Yours were, was it 24 months?
Yeah, I think 28 months apart, something like that.
So, it was in essence, we had 2 in diapers at the same time, 2 in preschool, 2 in elementary, going on up. Now, yours are adult now and married, and you have grandchildren. But it's been nice to kind of like, hey, Pastor, I'm going through this season of, and you're like, I remember. I remember going
from, it well.
Yes, elementary, middle. Now I have 2 high schoolers, and, they're getting ready to drive. So it's really been a lot of fun to talk with, you and those that are in the church that are very similar situations of getting advice and, and knowing kind of what to expect, or they're acting a certain way and you say, yeah, that's totally normal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's good to have people like that in your life too.
Absolutely.
That have already gone ahead of you, that can kind of help navigate the way, show you the way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, excited to bring one of our sponsors to you today, Two Roads Hat Company. Two Roads Hat Company has been an amazing company to work with. It is one of the companies that Silver Fox Squad uses, and we call it the perfect brim. They have a great versatility of looks in straw and in felt. I absolutely love Two Roads. It's a small business, which we love to promote, and it's made here in America. So this is a great opportunity for you to go to tworoadshatscompany.com and pick up one of your new perfect brims. Well, so now that we've talked a little bit about, your pastoral experience, we've talked about the real estate business and the marriage. I always like to ask, since the podcast is about suit up, how do you like to suit up in your life when it comes to, let's say, mentally, physically, emotionally? This is something about daily practices or things that you do that you feel like kind of really help you to get centered and, elevate your game in those areas.
Well, I think, and everybody's different, but for me, an important part of my daily routine, I try to spend some time in the scripture every morning, kind of before I start the day. And you don't have to spend a long time in the Bible. There's tons of reading plans and ways to read the scripture. So I try to get my inspiration from the scripture. I try to talk to the Lord every morning, certainly every day. to kind of get my day started off right. I wish I could tell you I was still going to the gym like I was.
Be real.
I've slacked off on that a little bit, and I'm trying to get back engaged in that part of my life.
Gotcha.
Because I always feel better when I exercise.
But you're a huge walker.
Yes, I take a lot of steps.
Yes.
I have a standing desk in my office at the church.
Right.
Which, by the way, that was a game changer for me. I had back surgery in 2018. And so getting that standing desk, I try to stand about 70% of my day. And some days that I flip that script. Sometimes I'm sitting 70% of the time. It just depends on how I'm feeling. But yeah, standing, walking, it doesn't have to be just vigorous exercise.
Right.
But just keep moving.
Yeah.
That's my thing. I try to keep moving. Sometimes I don't park at the closest.
You don't have the pastoral parkings? Talk about that.
Well, no, at our church we don't.
Right.
I made it a big point not to have a big giant chair on the platform.
Right.
Or reserve parking for me.
Right.
Whenever I get there's plenty of parking. So,
but you do park a little ways away to be able to make it.
Yeah. And like if I go to a shopping center or mall, I don't try to park right out by the door. Right. I just try to get those few extra steps going in and out. Just little things. Yeah. Go to the hospital. I try to take the stairs up and down.
Right.
Just little things that I think make a difference over time. But, for me, particularly in this season of my life, one thing that's really helped me is I'm a creature of habit. I'm a list guy. That's just the way I'm wired.
I love
it. Oh, I do too. And I can't relax until I've kind of done certain things each day.
Yes.
So I'm a creature of routine. And I think with routine, boundaries are so important. I'm not afraid to say no to certain things. I'm not afraid to ignore my phone if I need to. Now, I try to always return calls and emails and texts.
Right.
That's another thing.
Right.
But I really think everybody needs to find out what works for them and go with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that, you are very active, and it's a great point. You don't have to necessarily be in the gym the entire time. You can make daily decisions, and this is good for my audience as well, that you can do small steps and just walk all the time. I'm really intrigued because I had forgotten about the standing desk.
Yeah.
Do you feel, just on a side note, because I've got to digress for a moment on this, did you see any difference in your productivity by having a standing desk?
I don't know about if my productivity changed, but I felt a lot better.
Okay.
I started out, I wasn't real sure if I was going to commit to it.
Yeah.
So
who wants a standing desk?
I actually brought in a little table that was about the right height, and I put it in my office for a few months.
Yeah.
Worked from that. Then I bought one of those adjustable ones that you put on your physical desk.
Okay.
And then I committed fully to the standing desk. And what I love about mine is it's motorized.
Okay.
So I can, when I want to sit, I've got a sitting height.
Nice.
And I've got a standing height.
Nice.
And then, but yeah, I love it.
That's good.
I'll never, sitting, man, it just sitting.
You can rot away.
You can. It's tough. And I think that has a big impact on people's health too. We have gotten so sedentary.
Yes.
We sit at work. Many people do. Yeah. And you go home and you sit down to eat, and then you sit down and you watch TV.
And then you go to bed.
And then you lay down and go to bed. So, I think any physical, I just call it little physical cheats.
Yeah.
Anything I can do physically during the day, I think it has a cumulative effect.
Yeah, it does. It does. So I might have to look into that. I like that.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. It's one of those things that it's little small choices like that can make a long-term impact. So do you feel like as far as, I love the idea of, spending time in the Word, spending time with the Lord, and trying to kind of center yourself. How do you suit up as far as your fashion choices? Where do you find your inspiration? And I'd love to get your take on
Well, I'll
this.
tell you, fashion is probably the weakest subject we could talk about with me. I've changed over the years.
Yeah, I was going to say, how has your style changed?
Well, believe it or not, I think a lot of it has changed as the culture of our church has changed.
Okay.
Because we used to be a suit and tie church.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Everybody, we're wearing your Sunday best. My philosophy now has become just be your best and be comfortable.
Yeah.
So, I used to have a closet full of suits and ties. Now I'm more this. I'm kind of a blue jean guy, jeans and a jacket. Comfortable shoes are important to me. It's funny. The older you get, the more you're into the comfort part on the shoes. But yeah, I think for me, I think I like a nice pressed shirt. I don't like a wrinkly shirt.
Of course.
I like a good, comfortable jacket.
Yeah.
I wear jeans constantly.
Yeah.
I do wear suits occasionally to church. I like to keep people guessing.
I like how you'll change it up every once in a while.
Oh yeah, you know. I mean, I'll wear ties. I wear bow ties. Okay, my wife doesn't like bow ties, so they're kind of collecting dust in my closet, but I've still got them all.
Right.
Yeah, I just like to mix it up. You know.
And that's a great point, because you don't have to be in one particular vein, but whatever you choose to do, there's something to be said about making sure that it fits properly,
Yes.
that it's pressed, that at least it looks its best within whatever it is that you're doing.
I think so. I think, you know, you don't have to have a lot of money to wear clean clothes.
Nope.
To wear pressed clothes.
Right. An iron. I mean, you know.
And, you know, you can get stuff, you can buy stuff off the rack if your body's suited that way.
Of course.
That it'll fit. And if not, you have to
Have
spend
it
a little bit of money
Yeah.
on a tailor, and then you've got something.
Yeah, my tailor is my best friend.
Yeah.
So I definitely use a lot of off the rack, and I do have things made as well, but I really appreciate, you know, one of my mantras is that it doesn't have to be $1,000 custom made suit all the time.
Right.
You can find things that are very inexpensive or within a budget and make them your own and make them look really, really good.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And I think for me too, I just like to dress moderately, with and be comfortable.
Yeah.
In church and even in my day. You know, you catch me at the office, I'm using a pair of jeans and some leather shoes and either like a golf shirt or a untucked shirt. And that's kind of just how I dress.
Right. Yeah, and it's really based upon comfort level, but yet, you know, still has a sense of style to it.
Exactly.
Right. It's not just close your eyes and reach in the closet.
Yeah.
Hope for the best.
And grab out my grass cutting tennis shoes and my rough t-shirts. Yeah.
And I know that Robin would be like, you're not looking like that.
Yeah.
Going out of the house. Yeah. Do you feel like that she's been a positive influence on some of your style?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now she would love it if I wore a suit and tie every weekend.
Oh, well, what wife wouldn't?
Yeah, she would love that.
I get the same thing from mine.
Yeah,
She's like, "Oh, you look so nice today," or "You look so good in your suit and tie." Right.
So yeah, she would like that.
Yeah.
And she always looks great.
Yes.
She always looks great.
Yeah. She has a great sense of style.
Yeah.
Always has. Very, very put together, very modest, but very, very fashionable.
Yeah.
So I think she's rubbed off on you a little bit.
I think so.
So one of the things that we had talked about, we've had several coffee conversations, and this was one of the subjects that I really enjoyed diving into. And we talked about, sometimes we find ourselves in a position or doing something that we know isn't our true calling, but we know what our true calling is, but we just have to spend a little bit of time, keep doing what we're doing until the timing is right.
Yes.
In order to make that transition. So, you talked a little bit about that you were in the construction industry, and then the true calling of what your purpose come along. So there was a point in time where you were still working construction.
Oh, yeah.
And pastoring the church. Did you find the internal struggle at times?
Oh, not just a struggle, but incredible frustration at times. Because
Talk about how you dealt with that. Talk about your way of thinking. What were you thinking during that time? How did you deal with it and really not lose hope or not lose motivation?
I think one thing to always remember is whatever you're doing in life, do your best at it. Be your best. I've worked all kinds of jobs. I've had a full-time job ever since I was 15.
Right.
I mean, I've picked tomatoes all summer. I've done roofing work. I've done some painting. I've done construction. I worked in a chemical factory. I've worked at a print shop. I worked at a Chevrolet dealership in the parts department. I've bagged groceries.
Wow.
I cooked at a restaurant. I mean, I've done it all. Yeah. Washed dishes. And I've always tried to work hard at everything that I've done, including pastoring.
Yeah.
I think a work ethic is a statement of character. I really do. I think it's important that whatever you're doing, even if you're not thrilled doing it, work hard at it until you can find what it is that you feel passionate about.
Yeah.
So back to what you specifically asked, I mean, there was a season there where I felt called into full-time ministry, and I knew that it wasn't going to happen for a while. So I kept my eyes on the prize, but I tried to remain focused on my task. And for me, I had a young wife, I had a new baby, and so I knew my task was to work hard and provide for my family.
Right.
And so I did that with joy. But there were times that it was a little frustrating, saying, well, I really know I'm supposed to be doing this.
And I'm stuck doing.
But I'm stuck doing this. But I just had to stay the course until it unfolded. And even then, when I became a full-time pastor, I mean, I had to take a step back financially because I was making good money as an electrician at the time when I stepped back into, there wasn't any more overtime pay when you became a pastor. So I took a financial hit to do what I wanted to do.
Sure.
And I mean, I've never regretted it though. So I've been thankful because it's a privilege to get to do what you want to do.
Absolutely. Me personally, I've gone through a time where, you find yourself still doing something. You see what your true calling is or the things that you should be doing. It's not easy.
No.
It can be mentally and emotionally draining. But then again, you've got to find that internal, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and say, I'm doing this, for my family.
Right.
Or I'm doing this for whatever season. And do you feel like, this is for me personally, do you feel like that sometimes during that season that God was maybe testing you or
Yes.
or giving you opportunity to, how bad do you want it?
Yeah.
What are you willing to go through? All those types of things.
I think he tests you. I think he tests your character. I think he tests your integrity, your motives for sure.
Ooh.
About why do you want to do this so bad? Why? I mean, what's your purpose? What's your goal? What's your motive? But then also, I think it reminds you that you can do more than one thing at one time and still keep your eyes on the prize. And there's no shame in hard work.
Right.
There's no shame in a man. And as a matter of fact, I think the Bible even talks about it. It says that it's a shame for a man to not provide for his family.
Right. Right.
And provision,
by whatever means possible.
That's right. And provision, it means a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So, but I think you do what you have to do until you can get to where you want to be. But then you still have to keep doing what you have to do.
Yeah.
And you can't ever get comfortable. Even like the real estate thing, for an example. For 20 years, I didn't do anything else other than be a senior pastor. Now, there was a time there where I kind of wanted to dabble into that, but I just didn't really feel like it was time for me to do that. I didn't feel that sense of release.
Sure.
And so then when I added that to what I was doing, I've always just tried to make sure that I maintain the right balance between the two things.
Yeah.
Because ultimately I'm doing what I'm called to do, but one day when I step away from this, I'd like to have another stream of income, and I'd
something
like
to do
and keep myself busy.
Yeah, I was going to say.
A lot of guys retire, and man, they go down.
I can't stare at the
physically,
four walls.
mentally. Yeah, their health starts declining, and I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. When you were going through that period of time where you were working and you're saying that the Lord can test you and your motives and all of that, when let's say you're working and you're pastoring, you probably had to figure some of that out during that time.
Yeah, and let me just say this too. Hats off to every bivocational pastor because they're really working 2 full-time jobs. It's tough. And so I feel very blessed to be able to focus my energy on that task.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was tough, but it's character building.
Of course.
And then you find out what you're made of.
Oh, man. Yeah. Feet to the fire.
Exactly.
You're sweating it out one day and you're coming home from, working in the heat or being in doing all of that.
And frankly, just to put it in business terms, I also knew that if the church would grow eventually, I would be able to get to my goal of being a full-time pastor. I mean, this is just math here, right?
Of course, financially being able to do it. Yeah.
So one day that the church would be able to support me financially. And trust me, I will give them what they're paying for.
Right,
you know?
right.
I think
right.
that's important.
One of the things that I remember hearing is that, when you're preparing for a sermon and the period of time, obviously you've got to seek direction from the Lord. You have that preparation time. Then you over prepare, right? Yeah. You always have more than what you need. You get up there and then you're preaching your guts out on Sunday. It's kind of that I've heard the comparison of, an hour of preaching is equivalent to like an 8-hour work day, emotionally and physically.
Yeah.
It's draining.
It is. And I can tell you because I've been on both sides. I've worked the 10-hour work days.
Right.
And I've stood in the pulpit. It is emotionally and physically draining. And, people are like, yeah, right, whatever. That can't be true. But it really is. Now we've added another service. So, yeah, you're tired when you get home. Sunday is definitely a work day for a pastor.
And Lisa, I get it from Lisa too, because, obviously Lisa being our music, director, when she's up there leading worship and, the 3, 4, 5 songs that she leads and giving it everything that you have, they're exhausted at the end. Yeah.
And what people always forget, they just see the 3, 4, 5 songs, but they didn't see the hours of preparation, not only from Lisa, but the singers and the band members.
Right.
And there's so much that goes into it. Practice nights. And so
it's all about preparation.
Yeah, it is.
It's all about preparation.
And preparation shows itself when it's time for showtime.
Yeah.
It's time to step up to the plate.
Yeah.
You can tell whether people are prepared or not.
Oh my goodness. It's amazing to me where sometimes you'll be preaching a message and you'll have, let's say, 6 pages and you get through like 4, right? Just because you're in it.
Right.
But I'd rather be over prepared than under prepared. That's really, really cool. I know that do you feel like that have you gotten your system down as far as preparing for Sundays now?
I'd like to say yes. But I mean, I'm definitely more structured in that area, but there is a lot of ebb and flow. And sometimes even for a message, a sermon, you'll kind of marinate on a thought for weeks or even months before you really feel it's the right time to present.
So it's not the Saturday night, put it together for Sunday.
And we used to call those Saturday night specials. You've messed around all week long, and now it's 11 o'clock Saturday night.
I got to put something together.
I got to preach tomorrow. I don't do that anymore.
But you have done it in the past.
Oh, I've done it in the past.
All right.
I've done, particularly in the bivocational days.
Okay. Yeah, I would imagine.
I mean, you're just like trying to keep your head above water. So, but no, I kind of have more of a routine. I'll spend a study day on a Tuesday. And many times it will bleed over into Wednesday. I try to have everything prepared by Thursday afternoon, if possible, because then I send my notes to our executive pastor, who also happens to do some of the media team work.
Right.
And they will prepare slides with scriptures, the main points.
See, I love this behind the scenes.
Because there's a lot of moving parts.
Oh, absolutely.
Because now that we stream at liferva.org,
right, absolutely.
That's our church. We have to have media points, and there's cameras involved, and you can't just roll that stuff out on Sunday morning. Hey, here, guys, here's my stuff. You got to get that ready.
Oh, we could, but it would
it would show.
Would not be a good look.
Preparation shows up.
Come on now.
On game day, right?
Totally.
So I try to have all that ready. Now, sometimes I might have a week where I'm still running late. I may not have everything together till Friday or even Saturday, but luckily...
that's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, that's the exception, and Rodney always is very flexible. He's our executive pastor to get everything ready last minute if he's called on.
That's interesting how you have this procedure. So now I'm going to throw the curveball. Have you done all of that? And come Saturday morning, the Lord's like, throw it all out. We're going to do something totally different.
Yeah. It doesn't happen as much as it used to.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's because I'm preparing more on the front end.
Right.
But yeah, it's happened.
Yeah.
I'll give you a perfect example. I spent all week last week working on a message. And again, this is rare now. But then by Friday, I just felt like this is not what I need to talk about.
Wow.
So I just rebooted and then sent Rodney.
Shelf it, save it for later.
And I sent Rodney the final draft on Saturday.
Wow.
And but that was for last Sunday. So, but again, that's rare. I'm already right now I'm working on a series that I'm going to be doing in October.
Sure.
So you some stuff you're doing advanced planning.
It's really interesting to hear all of this behind the scenes because it shows how much is involved, how much strategic planning is involved. There's so many moving parts. That's just like running a business.
Well, it is. And now our church is not large, but it's larger than it was.
Right. It's not
Now-
7-Eleven building
Right.
large.
Now
It's-
we have volunteers, and we have volunteer staff members, and we have teams that they organize. So now, really, honestly, my position has now changed somewhat to, I feel like it's a three-pronged approach of what I do. I feed the flock, the sheep that I preach. I lead the leaders, because we've got leaders now that lead the congregation.
Right.
And then I try to cast vision and have a vision for our future. It's kind of what I do.
One of the things that I love about how you pastor our church is you're very much about team building, and you offer a lot of resources. Let's say even John Maxwell. Like how much was John Maxwell an influence
John
on?
Maxwell was huge, and I know I'm dating myself.
It's all good.
Some of you young leaders might not even know who John Maxwell is.
If you don't, you need to look
I
him up.
encourage you to get acquainted with him and his books. First leadership book I ever read, powerful book, Developing the Leader Within You by John Maxwell. I encourage everybody to get that book and read it.
Doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah, exactly. Then John Maxwell started something called, he doesn't do it now, I don't think, called the Enjoy, INJOY Life Club. And it was a monthly cassette tape.
Right.
Leadership
Cassette
tape with a handout. I would get them in the mail.
Right.
Robin and I we would gobble those things up. We would pop in the tape, work on the handout.
Yeah.
And then usually I would take that tape and handout and hand it out. We would duplicate it, hand it out to all our staff members so that they could grow. And I think you are what you take in.
Yes.
And you develop. So leadership training, I think, is important.
I always have said, where you're at in life is based on what you're reading, what you're listening to, what you're watching, who you have influencing
Yes.
you. If you're down in the dumps, look at your surroundings and the things that you're pouring in.
Yeah.
And to me, with the church growth in the beginning, you had to figure it out. And you had to find your own resources, and you had to find leadership trainings. Which is kind of interesting if you think about it. Like, here's a new pastor of a church, and he's having to find his own leadership training to figure out how to lead this congregation on the fly.
Yeah, because there just wasn't. Now, there's a lot of things available now,
naturally,
with the internet.
Right.
But
you still have to seek it out.
Yeah, you do. But back then, man, you just went and bought books and subscribed to tapes and tried to grow yourself as a leader.
Yeah.
So you could grow your people.
For sure. Well, one of the last subjects that I really wanted to kind of talk about, it's just such a beautiful, interesting story, is a little bit about your personal testimony. From, and if you share whatever you'd like with, with the audience, but just talking about, your younger years, what you went through, how you overcame, and just the beautiful kind of arc of how that worked. So.
Yeah, I think for me, my story was, I grew up, my mom and dad, I grew up in a 2-parent home, but I got involved in drugs and alcohol as a young middle schooler.
Yeah.
12, 13, 14. And when I was 15 years old, I was arrested at my school for selling drugs. And I went to Lee Davis High School. It's Mechanicsville High School now.
Yeah.
And that was a huge turning point in my life. I got expelled from school. And it was during that time in my life, that summer, I went to a Christian camp. And that's where I found the Lord. I had an amazing spiritual experience. Totally changed the trajectory of my life.
Yeah.
And so I went back to school that next year. And of course, now last time these folks had seen me, I had just gotten arrested and,
Yeah.
But
Here comes Buddy.
I'm coming back 2 weeks being a Christian. Had been baptized, had been filled with the baptism of the Holy Spirit, and went back. And so I was a totally different person.
Yeah.
And it was tough because, all my old friends were wanting me to pull me back into that lifestyle.
I bet.
Which, I didn't want to do that. And, but it was after that I realized I started finding out what my purpose was. And initially, I thought it was just to help other people my age, young people my age, and to kind of help pull them out of that. So I started bringing other kids to church and letting them know, man, that's not the life that you want. And it grew from that, and then I felt like it was about a year later that I felt like, the Lord impressed upon me. I call it a calling.
Sure.
That this was what my life was supposed to be. helping people, help pull people out of that destructive lifestyle and lead them to the gospel. And so for years, now that was, you got to remember, I'm 16, 17 now. That didn't happen until I was 29. That doesn't sound like a long time, but that was 12 years of preparation.
That you had to be patient and wait.
Yeah, working jobs, going to school, trying to figure out life, meeting my wife, getting married, just figuring it all out, growing. It was kind of my years in the wilderness, so to speak.
Right.
And then even at 29, I mean, I was clueless, and then I just had to equip myself and learn and grow and realize there were people that came into my life for a season, and some would come, some would go, but it was all part of the journey.
Yes. There are people that are just for seasons in our lives.
Yeah, I had one pastor explain it to me like this. People are like scaffolding. And, and by the way, you and I have been scaffolding too. But if you know anything about construction, you go to a construction project, you'll see scaffolding sometimes on the side of a building. But it's not there the whole time.
Right.
But for the season that it is there, it's critically important to building the structure. And there comes a time when the scaffolding comes down.
Right.
And it might even lay around on the peripheral for a while. It'll be piled up on the job site.
Man.
And the scaffolding serves a purpose.
Yes.
But eventually the scaffolding is gone.
Yeah.
And doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the scaffolding, but it was just there for a season. And I've learned in my life, people have come, and by the way, that's the most rewarding and most painful part of what I do. It's people. But people come and people go, and you have to understand not everybody's going to make the journey with you.
Right. You want them to.
You want them to.
But
even in life and marriage and business, whatever you're doing, not everybody's going to make the journey with you.
Yeah.
Now, there are people, if you've got a few friends that you have your entire life,
you're a rich man.
You're blessed.
Yeah.
That's right. Because people come, people go. And again, you and I have been that in other people's lives.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Recognize that, and it will save you a lot of heartache and frustration.
I love that. Just keep that in mind. People will come and go. It has nothing to do with you personally.
Right.
It is their journey and your journey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes you grow a certain way, and you grow in seasons, out of seasons. We all change.
Yes.
And if you're not, you have to embrace change. Change is always painful too, by the way.
Oh, I was going to say.
It is.
Have you changed a little bit over pastoring for 27 years?
Man, I've changed a lot.
About every year?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm continuing to change.
Yeah.
And change is healthy.
Yeah.
You need to, because you're not growing unless you're changing.
I love it. Yeah, that's so true. So true. Wow, Pastor, we've done it, man.
We have.
I told you it'd be a great little conversation. Yeah. And just sit back and just kind of let it naturally go whichever way. So now it comes a little bit of the fun part. Not that this wasn't fun, but I always like to have a couple of things off the cuff. But first and foremost, I always like to let my audience know, where can they find you? So some of the, ways that they can find you.
Okay. Well, I don't have a strong social media presence, but I am on Facebook.
Yep.
Buddy Thompson. I'm there. The greatest way to find me, though, is on the church website.
Yep.
LifeRVA.org, Life Church. And you can see us there online, or you can even come check us out in person.
Absolutely.
If I could put in a plug, 8378.
Go for it.
Atlee Road.
There you go.
Life Church.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at every Sunday.
Yeah. I'll be there too.
Yeah.
And my wife's there.
And Lisa will be
leading worship. So
That's right.
It's one of those things. We're a little biased. We kind of dig the place.
Yeah, we love
dig
it.
the place. Well, that's great. Well, appreciate you sharing that. So I always like to end with a couple of rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So, and these are easy. They're fun.
Yeah.
No big deal. So what is one app on your phone that you could not live without?
Todoist. Todoist.
Okay. And why?
It's my brain. It's my task list. Like a lot of times, if I'm thinking of something that I need to do, I add it there. I don't have to think about it until I'm ready to address it. It controls my calendar and it controls my task list.
Wow.
If I could only have one app,
that would be it.
It would be Todoist.
Wow.
Yep.
That's great. All right. It's really interesting hearing, all of my guests that I've had, hearing the wide variety of apps. It's really cool. One of my previous was like eBay. because he loves flipping stuff, right? You know, it's like, and one other guest was like Google Maps because I just could not get anywhere with it.
I know. That would probably be my
Number
second
two, right.
one too, yeah.
They always kind of say whatever was one,
Yeah.
two would probably be Google Maps.
Exactly.
But I like that. Like, all right. So then our last question, what would be the best advice for your 20-year-old self?
Oh, my goodness.
So looking at you at 20 years old, what would be the best advice you could give yourself?
Understand that it's not about you. It's about the people that God brings into your life. Wife, children, friends. Because if you serve others, it always comes back to you. As a matter of fact, my life scripture is Matthew 6:33. And it's seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. So my policy's always been, if I'll just put God first in my life, he takes care of all the other stuff. And I could tell you, I'm 55 years old. I started my Christian journey at age 15, and he has.
Absolutely.
That scripture has been true. So my 20-year-old self, I'd say, don't take yourself so seriously. You're not as smart as you think you are.
You were in construction at 20 years old, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is what you'd be telling that person.
Exactly. You're not as smart as you think you are. Invest. That's another conversation for another day.
Right.
Save money.
Oh.
Buy a house. Invest.
You could give him a 20-point plan, wouldn't you?
Oh, my word. Yeah. So many things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. That's some great advice. That's some great advice.
Yeah.
Well, Pastor, we did it again. I'm so thankful and honored to have you on the show today.
Thank you,
it was
Stephen.
A lot of fun. I knew it would be just a great conversation talking about a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah. And I just want to say this to your audience. I've been watching Stephen now for 15 years grow in his personal journey. And he continues to work his business. But what you see now, I heard about years ago.
That's right.
It's been a dream of his, and he's pursuing it, and I'm proud of you, Stephen.
Thank you.
You keep up the hard work.
I appreciate that.
And I'm glad I get to take the journey with you.
Hey, man, for real, I love the fact that we have, many, many years together. We still have our coffee shop times where we can catch up. I get my spiritual direction. I get my mentorship, all of that. So it's vital. I'm going to tell you what, audience, it's vitally important that you get one in your own personal life. For sure. Well, that's our show for today. I just want to say thanks again for joining us. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and we will be seeing you soon next time. All right, guys, today's show was sponsored by my very own company, Fox Edge Grooming Products. So we have a whole line of men's grooming products that I personally use and personally helped kind of formulate and come up with the idea and concept. We use all natural ingredients, and believe you me, the whole line smells fantastic. I love it. Anybody that ever has smelled it says, wow, this stuff smells great. So if you want to get your own Fox Edge hair care or beard line products, you can go to my website, which is www.stephenadkins.us. And of course, the link will be in the description below. So looking forward to seeing you guys with the Fox Edge. Appreciate you watching all the way till the end today. And thanks again for being a part of the Suit Up podcast. So we have a new way of support here at Suit Up with Patreon. You can subscribe in different tiers to support the show. The great news is that each has a different tier. And within that tier, there are different levels of access that you will have to myself. But all will support the show in a major way. So one of the tiers may be access to questions or interaction. Another tier may be an opportunity where you could submit photos or get some wardrobe advice. And even another tier, we may even be able to set up a personal Zoom call where you and I interact for 15, 20, 30 minutes. So these would be great ways that allows access to get some of those questions and some of the things that you'd like done answered. Now, naturally, if you can't support monetarily, we totally understand, but you can always subscribe for free and like and share our video with your friends and audience that you feel would enjoy watching Suit Up. So thanks again for joining.